that a lot of people
1031 exchange.
Because it used to be a big bullseye on your back. You had home office deduction, you can be guaranteed or not. That's not the case anymore. They actually made it easier to qualify, and more of your house actually qualifies. It's not a target on your back anymore. So think about that. The key again, the takeaway for you is if you got a client who does qualify for both, then whatever percentage of the property they are currently showing as the rental portion of the property or as the home office, that percentage of the property does qualify. Yes.
Somebody runs like a dog breeding business out of their primary residence, and then they sell their primary by the other one, and they're going to continue the dog breeding business. Can that qualify?
Again, it goes back to what you show on the tax return. Okay, if you're showing on the tax return that a portion of your property is your business property, then yes. I had a woman, she was an artist. She showed her house was her gallery. And her accountant was saying 60% of her house. So I don't know how I got that number, but it was a business property. It all depends on what they show on the tax return. By the way, one thing I do want to point out, for those of you who do not have it, we used to call this a Rolodex, we now call it a cell phone. In here is where you have your team, right? Here's where your lender friend, your title company. Here's where you hopefully have me in there. But there's something here you all should have, and that's an accountant. I cannot tell you how frequently I deal with people who have millions of dollars of rental property and they use TurboTax, and it freaking kills me because TurboTax does not answer tough questions. So for you, I strongly recommend as part of your team, please have a good CPA or a really good enrolled agent. Somebody that you can recommend to your clients when they have tax questions, because if they don't have an accountant, frequently they need to talk to somebody to realize. So most people don't realize a lot of the tax code is not black and white. A lot of the tax code is gray, which is why we have accountants. All right? Yes.
So how many years you have shown the tax?
How many years you have to show the property in tax return? The tax code does not say anything about that. So that's a question that's between you and your accountant. Most accountants are going to recommend at least a couple tax returns.
That was my question too. So let's say you own the house for 10 years, and maybe the first 7 or 8 years you ran this business, shut it down the last 2 before you sold the house.
They just screwed. It doesn't qualify anymore. Now, you have another situation. You have a client who does not have a home office. They do not have any kind of rental property on the facility. However, their gain on the property is way over the $500,000, right? So they don't want to pay taxes. So what do you tell these people to do? Move out. Turn their house into a rental property. Now, after they've been renting it for a couple of years, is that house now investment real estate?
Yes.
Does it still qualify as a primary residence?
Yes.
Yes. Because it still meets the criteria of having lived in the property 2 of the last 5 years. And because it meets both criteria, you could take advantage of both tax rules at the same time. Now here, though, people get confused about it. In fact, literally on my way down here, I spoke to a woman who bought her house for like $400,000. It's worth $1.5 million. She moved out about 18 months ago, turned it into a rental. She wants to sell it now. When she sells it, she is going to get to keep $500,000. For the $1.5 million, she gets to keep $500,000. But the other $1 million, the entire rest of the sales price, is what has to go to the exchange. It's not just the excess profit. It's the sales price minus the $250,000 or minus the $500,000. So it's equal or greater to that amount for them to defer their taxes. This is becoming very common. I structure 2 or 3 of these every single week right now. Really, really common. Yes.
Also, with that 1.5, with the $500,000 exclusion, somebody's got $1 million and they want to go exchange. They can take $100,000 of that, right? This is the boot.
Oh yeah,
pay tax on that.
Right, you just pay tax on that. Right, we'll get into that in just a second. Yeah, that part of it's fine. But one of the things I want to point out to you about this is, how many people here have helped somebody buy a move-up house? They had a house already, and they helped them buy a bigger house. You all done that, right? Frequently, these people will then use that former property as a rental property. Okay, this is how a lot of people start on rental property. Basically was their old house. Now they may or may not have the intention of selling in 2 years, etc. But here's something I strongly recommend that you do. Whenever you have a client in that situation where you help them do a move-up buyer, you may buyer, and they've turned their current house into a rental, exactly 1 year to the day after they bought that house, call them. How did that being a landlord? They're going to give you some different answers. They may say, oh, I love it. It's a great rental. It's making a lot of money. The tenants are fantastic. I love it. Don't call me again. No problem. They might say, God, I hate it. I never want to be a landlord. Get me out of this. Now, the reason that's important to know is because these people don't want, they probably don't want to do a 1031 change, but they probably don't even realize they still qualify for the $500,000. Because they think, oh, I moved out, I don't qualify for that exemption anymore. But they still do, because as long as they sell it within that 3-year window, from the day they move out to the day they sell it, they still qualify for the exemption. So make sure they realize that. The third option is going to be, well, no, I think I have no problem being a landlord, but maybe this is not the right rental property for me. So now that's when you're going to say, okay, fine, let's get the tenant's lease to expire, so now we can sell the property. This way you can do the both. You can keep your 500 and do an exchange on the rest. But I strongly recommend, if you have a client in this situation, even if it wasn't in their original plan, call them. You can find out what they want to do in the long run with this property, because you may be able to help them, solve a problem that they didn't foresee when they moved up into a bigger house. Make sense? Okay. Any questions about primary residences?
So, if you're in an owner-occupied duplex, and, for example, I live in a 2-bedroom, I've got a 3-bedroom I rent, and I do take the office deduction, I can turn it into a primary residence if I move into the 3-bedroom?
Ah, great question. Can you do this the other way around? Can I take a property that was a rental property and move into the primary residence, move into what was a rental and call it a primary residence? You can, but it's a lousy tax rule. It's a lousy tax situation. The reason is this: when you move into a property that was a rental property, you have to pay tax on the time the property was a rental before you moved into it. So let's say you've been renting a property for the last 8 years. You move into it for 2 years because then you can get your $500,000 and you sell it. Well, you've only lived in the property 2 out of the 10 years you've owned the property. That's only 20% of the time. So you only get to keep 20% of the capital gain. So it's a lousy tax. It used to be a great tax dodge. Move into your rental, live in it for 2 years, get your 500, move in, keep doing that. In 2009, that law changed. Now when you move into a rental, now when you move into a rental and you sell as a primary residence, you got to pay taxes for the years it was rented out first. So the takeaway for you is this: the idea of moving into a rental, living in it for 2 or 3 years, and selling it, bad tax situation. I get, but in some cases there's a really good tax situation.
I need to get married.
No, I wouldn't recommend it. It's not worth it. No, where it does become a good tax situation is where you use the 1031 exchange to buy your retirement home. Okay, I don't want to move into my crappy little rentals in Modesto. But what I want to do is I want to take my crappy little rentals in Modesto. I don't apologize to anybody from Modesto, and go buy a house in Hawaii. So I'm going to take all the rental property, do a 1031 exchange to Hawaii, rent it for a few years, and then when I retire, where am I retiring to? Hawaii. And then I'll live there the rest of my life. Now I basically use 1031 to buy my dream home, to buy my retirement home. Around here, I will do a lot of exchanges for people who will buy in the villages. There are certain parts of the villages that you get a rental property. Or they'll buy a house in the Del Webb communities up in Lincoln, the Granite Bay, Discovery Bay, all those places. The idea here is I'm going to rent it for a few years, but when I'm ready to retire, that's where I'm going to move to. That's the good way to use the 1031 exchange to buy a property that you're eventually going to move into your primary residence.
Still pay tax on it.
No, not until you sell it. Converting the house to a primary residence does not create a tax liability.
So you sell the house later on.
It's when you sell the house later on, or more likely, wait until you die, and then no one has to pay the taxes. By the way, one thing I forgot to say about dying. Well, it's going to happen to all of us eventually. One thing to remember about dying also is that the death of one spouse, if you own the property as community property or in a trust that's designed as community property, the death of one spouse gives a surviving spouse a full step-up in basis. So it's not you dying, it can be your spouse dying. and you'll be able to sell it. And the reason I bring this up, again, I'm not saying we're going to use dying as a tact or as a marketing strategy, but the reality is, if you're in this business long enough, you are going to have a client pass away. And when you have a client pass away, I don't recommend chasing them down at the funeral, but a few months later, give them a call and find out, hey, by the way, just wanted to let you know, how's it going with your real estate? How do you like the rental property? They may not realize they got a full step up in basis on this property and can now sell all the real estate and have the zero tax liability.
Ron, don't tell me.
Just 1 second. The key here is obviously, one, you are not giving them tax advice. You are not telling them they got to step up in basis. This is what you can do. What you're saying is, hey, you might want to talk to your accountant, because if you got this step up in basis, this gives you an opportunity to do something with it. So, but it's another opportunity for you to actually help the client very much. They may not realize they have this. They can wipe away the tax stuff. Yes.
If the home is in a trust and one of the married couples passes away and the home's in a trust, I'm not sure if that's the case.
It depends on how the trust is written. It depends if the trust is written as an AB trust versus a community property trust. There are different ways the trust can be written that may or may not grant it to them. That's why you're not going to tell them whether or not they have it. That's a question that's asked their own tax person.
Okay, it used to be the new rule was you had 2 years after spouse dies to give the full step and basis to sell that property.
No, that's not. No, what you're thinking about is when a spouse passes away, you have 2 full calendar years from the date of death to get the $500,000.
Yes, that's what I said.
Right.
That
But
hasn't changed.
That has not changed. No.
Okay.
So we have after 2 years, it goes down to 250. You have 2 full calendar years from the date of death to get the 500. But it's not the step up in basis. It's just the exemption you get.
Well, there's a couple things going around pushing these different things like 1031s, like a monetized exchange.
Yep.
What's your thoughts on them?
In September actually, the Franchise Tax Board and the IRS presented at the Federation of Exchange Accommodators, which is our trade show, and basically said they're ready to rule them out. Any of you who gets my newsletter will know that I said that a couple months ago, that the deferred sales trust, monetized installment sales, all that kind of stuff, the Franchise Tax Board is looking at them with very jaundiced eyes, and the IRS has told us verbally they are also. So I'd be very cautious about those right now.
Yeah, Steve Crow, or Sam Crow, has one that he says is exempt from that. I don't know, I should send that to you.
Sure. I know what it is. Yeah. Very much. Yes.
That's the name of the guy.
Standing
Oh.
Crow, the guy who administers the monetized. So my understanding, the Franchise Tax Board was saying that they were going to eliminate the monetized installment sale and the deferred sales trust as a bailout tool to the 1031 exchange.
Initial, yes. As part of it, yeah.
But I did not see that they were going to eliminate them on the whole, just as a backup
They-
bailout tool.
The IRS at the association meeting, they did put this in writing, but they have said that verbally they are viewing it as an abuse of section 453, and they are looking at the whole thing with a jaundiced eye. They're looking at the whole thing with probably not will last long term. Now, mind you, they haven't said anything in writing, and also typically when they throw out something like this, they don't make it retroactive. They'll go from forward on. A few years ago, we used to have something called a private annuity trust, and when the IRS ruled they don't exist, they said from here forward they will not accept. So I would expect to do something like that. We'll see what ends up happening. I think it's something you'll hear more about in the next year or two.
They have that final saying in March of 2021, right?
Supposedly, but things like that always get delayed.
Let me ask you, does everybody know what a monetized exchange is? No, it's on the sale. Does everybody know what it is? If you don't know, can you give us?
Well, there are different forms to them, to be honest with you, and I would prefer not to be, because there are different forms to it, I would prefer not to be the one who talks about them, if only because it's not something that is not something that we see just not something that we get involved with, so I'd prefer not to. So we have a second question back there?
I did.
Yeah. Scott?
What do you foresee in 2020 as far as exchanges go?
I think 1031 kind of lags the market when it comes to real estate. So when real estate starts to slow down, we're 6 to 9 months later. I still see real estate doing pretty well this year, pretty consistent. The key for you, I think, is going to be interest rates. Because if interest rates stay, when they went back down, you got to pick back up big time again. And I think that's going to be the same thing with our business as well. We've had 3 or 4 at least 3 really consistent, solid years when it comes to exchanges. And I don't see that going away. The one thing that we have right now is even if prices, kind of stay where they are or even go down 5%, I mean, people still have huge gains in their property. And so because of that, you're going to see more people, you're still going to see people want to exchange because they still have huge gains in their property. Let me kind of take this off in kind of a different direction. I get a lot of people asking me about what's going to happen with the rent control. A lot of people are just deathly worried about rent control. What is rent control going to mean to California? And is that going to kill 1031s? And I said, not at all. I mean, I do a ton of exchanges in Oakland and San Francisco, in places that have rent control that's 10 times more stringent than what's been proposed in California. Now, what it does do is this. It might change the price point, but you're still going to have buyers and sellers. For everybody who's afraid of rent control, that means they're going to sell that property. Somebody who's not afraid of rent control, they're going to go buy that property. So just because something like rent control is something that the state has passed, and we're going to have some effect on the market. Yeah, possibly, but overall, if anything, I think it's going to make the market move because you're going to have more people. Some people want to get out of it because of it, and some people aren't afraid they're going to get into it. There's always buyers and sellers for those kinds of properties.
Yeah. We've had rent control since 1978. Yeah. So it's not going to have an effect. It just changes the perspective.
Right. So I don't think it's going to change the 1031 market at all. Okay. Yes.
What percentage do you see of 1031 exchanges going from California out of state and from out of state into state?
Well, obviously there are more people going out of state than in state, if only because cash flow is so much better out of state properties. I would say probably 25 to 30% of the cases, just off the top of my head, people go out of state. At the same time, I'm doing maybe as much as 10% of my business, people who are selling out of state, bringing money to California. Surprisingly, but you realize that there's very little appreciation in those markets. It's very difficult to manage real estate when it's out of state. And so I would say probably for every 3 that I'm going out of state, I've got 1 coming back into state.
So what are the best areas outside of California right now?
Yeah.
There are 49 other states that I'm not going to. No way. Though I will say this. I guarantee you, if you're selling a house in Fresno, you're buying in Idaho. I do not know what the hell's going on with Idaho and Fresno.
It's really growing, Idaho.
Yeah, but only Fresno. Nowhere else. Fresno to Idaho. There's a train going right straight through there.
You ever been in Fresno?
Yeah. See, that's a good point. See, the bullet train, they lied. It's not where the barrier is going north. It goes straight into Boise. But it's bizarre.
Raleigh, North Carolina seems to
North Carolina's huge. Yeah, it's a big market. The truth is this: I don't look at it. When people send me an exchange, they don't send me the numbers. They don't send me their pro forma, the numbers. They just buy, they sell. I don't know what people are doing right now. Basically they're buying everywhere. I've done exchanges to Alaska, North Dakota. I've done exchanges to states I've never even heard of before. So, yes.
Yeah, Ron, can you explain out, if you don't mind, about the reverse exchange?
Okay, so let's keep going back. All right. By the way, going back to there's one last thing I do want to point out. Flipping real estate. Is flipping real estate considered to be investment real estate? No. When you buy something because you think you can sell it for more money, the IRS calls that a job. Okay? So you buy it, you fix it, you sell it. That's not investment real estate. That's considered to be ordinary income. So please don't let your clients who are flipping real estate think they can do an exchange.
They need to put the taxes on this.
No. Yeah, they're trying to turn out into a rental, but most people who flip in real estate don't want to do that. We'll get there in a second, just one second. All right.
Asking one question. What about rental income? It's not ordinary income?
No, rental, well, when you get the rents, it's ordinary income, but when you sell a rental property, it's considered to be capital gains income. It's taxed as a capital gains rate and depreciation recapture rate. And both of those are normally lower than ordinary income rates. So the
Thank
capital
you.
gains rate is a lower rate.
So if you, I should understand, I didn't myself. I thought you could. I mean, I've never seen anybody do it.
Yeah.
I just assumed that you could do it. You're saying you can't do it till you want.
Right.
If you rent the place out for 3 months, can you do it at that point?
How long do you have to rent out a property for it to be considered an investment?
2 years.
The IRS does not give us a number. It's not in the tax code. We do not have a specific number. Most accounts will say to be safe, 2 years. 2 years is considered to be a safe amount of time. Anything less than that is basically between you and your accountant. I personally did an exchange where I only owned a piece of real estate 3 months. But what happened was, I got an unsolicited offer. Someone literally came to me and said, I want your property, here's a $50,000 premium. Sold. Did I buy that property with the intention of it being an investment? Yes. Something happened outside my control, or outside my expectation. I had a woman once, she bought a house in the Sierras in a lake. The day she bought the property, the day she closed escrow, the HOA banned rentals.
What time in the morning of the hour?
Bottom line was, she sold that property 3 months later. Did she buy that property with the intention of it being an investment? Yes. Something happened outside of her control, sold it for less. But again, most accountants are going to say 1 to 2 years, 2 years if you really want.
How much your premium tip? You have to write it down, and that's the challenge.
It's whatever you and your accountant feel that you can justify to the IRS should you get challenged. That's how it's said.
Well, you say you turn your primary into a rental,
Right.
the tenants are family members, is that a big red flag?
No, that's a very important question. If you have family members living in the property, they must pay market rate rent. If you got a family member living in the property and they're not paying you rent, then it is considered to be a second home and does not qualify for 1031. And so, in fact, there's a very specific section of the tax code. When a family member lives there, for it to be an investment, it has to be treated market rate rent. All right, now. Okay, so let's go back. The other question people always ask is the timing. How long do you have to do an exchange? And so how long do you have?
180 days.
To close escrow, but it's a much more important number.
90
45 days. 45 days to identify what you're going to buy, 188 days to close escrow. Can you get an extension on those?
No.
No. No extensions, no exceptions, no excuses. So, is 45 days a lot of time?
No.
No. So a couple things about the 45 days. Number one, if you got a client who says, I don't want to do an exchange because I don't think I can find something in the 45 days, my answer to that is, try. Put the money in the exchange. You're buying yourself 45 days to look. If you find something fantastic. If you don't, then you throw it out. Then you get your money back and the exchange fails. But you try. So you're basically buying yourself 45 days to find, yourself 45 days to look. And number two is, you as agents have an important role here. When does the 45-day clock start? At the close of escrow. Ask for longer escrows. I'm seeing a lot of 60-day escrows right now, a lot of 45-day escrows, a lot of 30-day escrows with an option to extend. I had an exchange last year with a guy in Palo Alto, 30-day escrow with 3 30-day options to extend. Okay? So the bottom line is, all that time before escrow closes, all that time doesn't count towards your 45 days. So you have a way to play a role in that. I got a call last year. An agent in Redwood City calls, hey, my client is selling a house in Los Angeles who wants to do an exchange up to here. Can we get her on the phone? I go, sure. Get her on the phone. She goes, oh yeah, I accepted an offer last night. 7-day escrow. Oh. Why would anybody put their clients in that situation? That's virtually, to me, it's almost malpractice. But anyway, so again, the clock starts at the close. But there is the one somewhat foolproof way to get around the 45 days, and that is a reverse exchange. What is a reverse exchange? A reverse exchange is exactly what it sounds like. It means you are buying first and then selling. Now, you can go into contract at any time. If you go into contract to buy something and it's contingent upon the sale of your property, it's still a regular exchange. But if you ever get into a situation where you need to buy first and then sell, that is a reverse exchange. It is a more expensive transaction. It is a more complicated transaction. There are different ways of structuring them because we can either, because the key is this though, you can't buy that property and then call me. Because if you buy that property, you are now entitled to both of them. You cannot do any change into something if you already own it. So as the intermediary in a reverse exchange, our job is to take title either to the property you're selling or to the property you're buying. Depending on a few factors, we'll determine which one we do. I don't want to get too deeply into reverse exchanges. No, they exist. They are more expensive. You're probably looking at, depending on a few factors, $5,000 to $8,000 to do reverse exchanges, sometimes even more. The third thing to realize is you have to have the money. Because normally you take the money from what you sell to buy the new property, right? In this case, you haven't sold it yet. And the lenders in the room, how many lenders in the room would love to lend to an LLC that has zero assets? Not too many. So getting a loan is another issue also. So sometimes if the client does need to get a loan, often you're looking at a hard money loan. Not always, but often. So again, it's more expensive, it's more money out of pocket up front, a little more complicated, but we do about 100 reverse exchanges every month. There's a ton of them. And so it's a very common thing. The IRS approved it, so it's a legitimate thing. But if you guys have a situation, call me and I'll walk you through specific, how to structure for the client specific situations. Any other questions on reverse exchanges? Okay, a good example. I got a client, in fact, the one I was talking about earlier, who converted the house from primary residence to rental. She wants to go buy something in Colorado for $500,000. So what she's going to do, she has the cash. She's going to lend us for $500,000. We're going to buy the Colorado property and hold on to it until she sells her property in San Bernardino. Like I said. And now, you're still bound by the same 180-day rule as a regular exchange. It's not like open-ended. You still have to do it within 180 days, like a regular exchange. But it does give you the ability to go actually buy this property and then sell yours afterwards. Another question about reverses? Question for the last part of it is, when it comes to the dollar amounts, remember you got to buy equal or greater to what you sell the property for. So if you sell for $1 million, you got to buy for at least $1 million if you want to defer all of your taxes. If you want to keep some, if you want to pay taxes, you can buy something less expensive, that's okay. Sell for $1 million, buy for $900, no problem, you just pay taxes, whatever the difference is. But if you want to defer everything equal or greater and all the equity, all the lenders in the room on the side of the room here, make sure that you match the amount of loan to the amount of equity. I had one last year where the woman was sold a property here, buying a shopping center in Florida. She needed an $800,000 loan. More expensive, needed a loan. The lender said, if I give you $1 million loan, I can get you a better interest rate. She said yes. So she got the $1 million loan. At the end, we had $200,000 left in the exchange. She had to pay taxes on $200,000. So it's boot, exactly. That's what boot is.
What's the tax rate on that?
That's going to be anywhere from 25 to 35%. And the problem is, by the time we see it, we see the closing statement, the loan's funded. It's too late. So, as lenders, one thing I strongly, I know there are a bunch of you in this room that are lenders, one thing I strongly recommend as lenders is that find out how much money is in the exchange. Find out, ask for the closing statement before you get the loan approved. Make sure that you're not giving in too much of a loan. Now, if it's within a couple $100, who cares? But if it's $10,000, $20,000, $50,000, that's too much. You may want to talk to the client about reducing that amount, because if not, they may end up with a taxable consequence.
Can the lender be sued for that?
I do not know. That's a good question. I do not have that. All right. Question for you. Why do people do 1031 exchanges?
Avoid paying taxes.
Defer taxes.
To defer taxes is the wrong answer.
No, not to pay taxes.
Nobody does an exchange to defer taxes.
Not to pay.
To buy better.
To buy something better.
Who said that?
Because they want to buy something better. Now, what does better mean? Better means whatever the hell the client wants it to be. Better might be, I want to go out of state. Better might be, I want a better cash flow. Better might be, I want to sell my one house to buy 5 houses. Better might be, I want to sell my 5 houses to buy 1 house. Better might be, I had one, he was selling a 4-plex in Gilroy to buy a house in Cupertino to rent to his daughter so his grandkids could go to school in Cupertino. Okay? It's whatever the client wants it to be. And the reason I bring this up to you is when you talk to an investor, when you're talking to somebody who owns a rental property, you're not asking them, hey, do you want to do an exchange? Because everybody wants to do it for taxes, right? What you're asking them is, what is a better property for you tomorrow than you own today? What do you want out of your real estate? And if you look at it that way, 1031 is the tool that allows you to get from what you own today to what you want to own tomorrow. If you think about it that way, 1031 is really, really, really powerful. And that's a good way to look at it.
So,
Awesome.
last question.
I got brochures, I got my business card for those of you who I don't have. If you aren't, you're receiving my newsletter, comes out about once a month, get your card. I know a lot of you have new email addresses because you have new companies that you have new work that have been bought out from underneath you. So feel free to give me your new email address also, because even if I have you on my list, there's a very good chance it's not the same situation anymore.
Okay.
Anything else? In that case,
Lana, how much talk after?
I'll be
How much
Guys, real quick, as you know, we always do a picture with our guests. So we go right to the back. And a couple of things too, real quick before you all leave. There's a meeting tomorrow at Evergreen, right?